My mind immediately went to the fact that I was a mom of 2 little girls, and it was, what do I need to do right now to ensure my survival? But if I don't survive, what do I need to do now to ensure that my kids are okay and happy living their life without their mom?
Welcome to the 7-Figure Flipping Podcast, where we take you behind the scenes of wholesaling and house flipping businesses. The systems and automation that we discuss will help you build a real business instead of another job for yourself. From beginners to those doing hundreds of thousands a year, we go deep into the details and strategies that are working today. And now your host, Bill Allen.
Hey everybody, welcome to the 7-Figure Flipping Podcast. This is Bill Allen, and today I have a different show for you. I think it's going to be incredible, very heartfelt and touching show, and also a mindset show. So we talked a lot. I did a mindset presentation on the cruise. We put it out recently, and we've gone through this journey, but I'm kind of interrupting our current scheduled series to bring this to you, because right now inside of our mastermind group, inside the 7-Figure Flipping community, we have one of our members who's battling cancer right now. So I'm not going to mention who it is, but I just want him to know that we have his back. We're on his team. Everybody is praying for him. Everybody cares about him a ton. And our whole community is just kind of, praying for him, thinking about him and supporting him and raising him up and lifting him up as he needs it. So it's going to be tough for me not to mention his name right now, but we got you, man. And this one it kind of stemmed from hearing your story and you kind of opening up and telling us what's going on with you and your journey. And I have a really good friend who I went to high school with, and we were athletes together. We'll talk a lot about our story and our journey and how we met and how we kind of grew up together. And she had a battle with cancer a few years ago and has kind of come out the backside of that. But I saw her story right after this. It's like, God puts you in a place and directs you where you want to go. And I heard this from one of our members, and then I saw her story just laid out in bullet point in long form. And just reading that said, you know what? She has a message that would be perfect for our members to hear, for him to hear, for anybody out there to hear, and to raise some awareness in her form of cancer. And I wanted to bring her on the show. So I think you guys are going to really love this. I'm really excited to talk to her. We were even just joking pre-show and just laughing together, and it's really kind of took me back to, I don't know, 1997 or something, when we right before we graduated high school. So I want to welcome my good friend, and she actually lives right down the street from me now here in Nashville, which is incredible. I'll call her Natalie Cox, but she now goes by Natalie Hennes. So got married and changed her last name. So Natalie, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. And while you call me Natalie Cox, I'm probably going to call you Billy, because that's how I grew up knowing you. But no, thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, we changed that. I went all through college that way too. And then when I went to grad school, it was like the perfect time to kind of change my name and grow up. So I was like, I don't know, I guess I was 23 at that point when I had to change from Billy to Bill. I always didn't really love Billy for some reason. I don't know. My son, we call him Will now. So I was I'm the third William and he's the fourth William. So now I said, I didn't like it, so we'll just call you Will, and now we can tell the difference between us. So you can call me whatever you want. I've been called a lot worse on the show than Billy. So why don't you tell a little bit, maybe let's go back to kind of where we met and kind of growing up together and what that was.
Yeah, well, we were the first graduating class of our high school, and you and I both played varsity soccer, and I feel like they were always kind of trying to put the boys and the girls team together and getting us to, socialize and be motivated off of each other. But we met, we had the same group of friends, and dated one of my good friends. But yeah, so that's where we met, and I remember we were both state champions senior year. And when they announced it in the meeting, all of the boys team yelled that we were co-state champions because we shared the title with another team in another part of Maryland. So, but yeah, no, we had some good memories.
So super competitive athletes, obviously. Okay. We wouldn't even let the girls team say, hey, no, we're better, right? So, but you were always incredibly competitive. So a great athlete. Did you just play soccer? You played... Played
basketball and ran track until soccer took over spring as well.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, I remember you as the soccer player, right? But I remember you, like, I was a wrestler too, and we played a bunch of different sports, and sports was really important to me. But I also remember kind of, running around all over town, doing some crazy stuff, doing things.
And we were on the homecoming court together.
Yep, that's right. So I tell you what, maybe we'll share that photo. So you and I are sitting next to each other as, like, I don't know, like a prince and princess or whatever they called it, on somebody's convertible in a parade, right?
That's right.
So I just saw that picture pop up on my Facebook feed, and I shared it again. It was, how long ago was this? 23 years ago or something like that.
It was the fall of 97. So yeah.
Yep. So it's crazy. I just thinking about, we've lived twice as long. We've been over twice as long than it was then. So I don't know, maybe we're dating ourselves, but this is my 40th year. And so anyway, I'm excited to kind of talk to you and dig into this because
sure.
So then you went off to college, and did you go straight to Davidson?
I went straight to Davidson, where I played 4 years of D1 soccer there as well.
Okay, and then what was it? What did you do after that? So I went to Georgia Tech, and then we kind of like lost touch at that point. I didn't really come back to Maryland a lot, but I think when I did, we'd see each other on, like, Thanksgiving or different time occasionally. And keep in mind, guys, if you're listening, this was a school that was put together and attracted 3 different schools at the time. So they created this high school, and when we were juniors, there were no seniors. So the first year that this school was created, we were juniors, and I was a transplant from another school. It's called a technology magnet program, and I really went there to play soccer. Our soccer coach came, Bill Stera, and I've talked about him before. He was kind of one of those role models and mentors to me of my leadership skills. And then our junior year, we didn't have any seniors, and we lost in the finals our junior year of the state championship for soccer. And then our senior year, we won. And our senior year, we were the first graduating class. And then we kind of, like, Natalie came from a different school, and then there was another school that kind of fed this program, this brand new school. So we were all kind of, I remember showing up that first day. I didn't know anybody. It was really kind of uncomfortable, but we had that soccer team. So we showed up a couple weeks before school for soccer. So I got to know some of the girls, and we were, like, checking them out. And she said that I dated one of her friends. We won't really dig into that too much today, I hope. So then we kind of, graduated. Then you went to school, I went to school, and you played 4 years of Division I soccer. And then what'd you do after that?
Yeah. So right after, I kind of decided I was not going to go home to Maryland. I knew I was an English major at Davidson, and it was either lawyer, teacher, kind of, what are you going to do with an English major? And I actually really wanted to sing. And so I had been singing a lot, doing voice lessons through college and everything. And that was the main reason I moved to Nashville in June, right after graduation. Got here, I worked with a few songwriters and stuff for a while. My best friend from college actually knew one of the biggest songwriters here in Nashville. And so I worked with him a little bit, tried out for American Idol. That was an interesting story.
Nice.
But, I just kind of got here and realized after doing it for a little bit that I wasn't really sure that was for me. And then I met my husband, Rob, here, who's from Wisconsin. We both happened to come in. And, we weren't sure we were going to stay, but we stayed and we got married and we had 2 kids here, and we have just fallen in love with the Nashville area. And that's, kind of why we're still here. And my whole family's all over the place in the country. But this was a good place to raise kids. And, I've done, I worked in sports marketing after I decided singing was not for me. I worked for the Nashville Sports Council, shifted over to television and advertising for years. And then I decided to go back to Belmont and get my master's in teaching, where I taught for years. And then when I had my second daughter, I stopped that and became a personal trainer. So I've kind of been all over the place, but personal training really is awesome for me because it kind of, in a way, is like full circle, comes back to that, that I just feel like I'm an athlete. I define myself as an athlete. And so what I'm doing now and how I'm impacting and helping others is really, it's the best place I can be right now, and
awesome.
For my kids to see.
Yeah. And I've seen you, coaching the kids soccer and out there and seeing images, and you shared an old video of you kind of coaching a soccer team and stuff from years ago. So it's really cool. And so I actually didn't know what you did after Davidson. So coming back here in singing, and then moved into kind of sports, TV and marketing, and then over to the personal training side. So I knew you as a personal trainer. When I came back here, we kind of linked back up again, and that's what I just saw. So, okay. So what what happened? So you had two little kids, and kind of maybe we can just jump into that story, because I think I think the backstory of like singing and that kind of thing will come into play here about some things that you may have felt like you were going to lose. So what happened with your journey? A little bit about kind of the
diagnosis.
What was that like?
Okay, so it was the summer of 2017. I was probably in the best shape of my life at that point. A couple years out from having my second daughter, and having been a personal trainer for a few years, I was just in great shape, eating really well, exercising a lot, coaching soccer still. And Rob and I were at a wedding up in Newport, Rhode Island, and we were having some fresh tomatoes from one of my friend's gardens. And I just noticed I had what I thought was a canker sore, or an ulcer in my mouth, which people get all the time when they eat a lot of acidic foods. So I didn't think anything of it. About a week and a half later, we get back to Nashville, and I noticed that it was still there. So first thing I did, I Googled, how long should a canker sore last? And it said about 4 to 5 days. So I thought, well, that's weird. Mine's lasted about, double that time. So I called my dentist, who is my friend, and I said, Alicia, I have this spot in my mouth. It's not going away. And she didn't seem too concerned. She did say, it's probably just a really stubborn canker sore. Don't have any lemons, acidic foods. But if it's not gone in another week, call me. So another week went by. It was still there. And I called her, and she said, let's get you in to see an oral surgeon and have it biopsied. So I went to an oral surgeon's office here in Franklin, and she was lovely. But she looked at me too, and she's like, you're as healthy as can be. You're a personal trainer. You're doing everything right. I can think of many things that is not, the big C. And I was confident, and it's a small practice, so it took 10 days to get the biopsy results back. Rob just happened to be with me the day that we went in. They didn't call me ahead of time and say, bring someone. I just went in. He was with me. And the doctor came in. We talked for a few minutes, and I could see just her face changed. And she looked at me and said, she goes, I don't even know how to tell you this, but you have cancer of the floor of your mouth, and which is also referred to as oral cancer. And that just was the beginning of it all. So from the point that I noticed something in my mouth to when I was diagnosed was probably about a 2-month time period. What I remember immediately doing was, other than feeling a complete utter shock, I just remember saying, I have to call my parents. And she said, you take whatever time you need, you stay in this room, you call whoever you need to call. And so it was, for Rob, it was a tough moment. It was exactly a year to the day that his mother had passed away. And we already were thinking about her a lot that day. And so it was just kind of a double hit for him. And I remember I called my parents. That was the first call. My dad's a gastroenterologist, a physician, and I kind of knew that he would just know what to say and tell me what to do exactly. And he gets on the phone. They were actually in Florida babysitting my sister's children. And he had to step out of the room. And my dad is, he's somebody who I saw maybe cry twice in his life. One of the times when his mother passed away. But when my dad got choked up when he heard this, I knew it was two things. It was, one, a parent should never hear, something like this about their child. And number two, he must have known kind of exactly what type of cancer this is and how mutilating it was. Otherwise, I think he, would have felt a little more confidence in the process. But And my mom got on, and she was obviously very upset, but also quite stoic. We just set a plan immediately. There was no time at this point to waste, and we just set a plan, and we were like, the options were go to MD Anderson, or right here in Vanderbilt, they have a world-renowned doctor for head and neck cancers, which is what oral cancer falls under. And his name is Dr. Netterville, and he was not the person I was able to get in to see, but I got in to see Dr. Sarah Rohde, who trained under him and had already at this point performed about 500 surgeries of the head and neck area. So my dad had many questions for her before, and she's become like a sister to me since. So that's kind of the before the tough physical part all happened.
You know, that's we talked pre-show about the fact that you haven't really talked about this before. A lot of it's been on social media or written or images and stuff from the whole story. So it might be a little bit tough and open some wounds. So, and before the show, I thought that I would be fine. And as you were just talking, it took me back to the place when I heard that about James. And I like just trying to hold it together as you were talking was difficult for me, because I remember sitting in probably a very similar room to you. Hearing some news about my son who hasn't been born yet, of something that I thought we would never get past. And it's so hard to hear that stuff, and you go to the darkest places when that happens, yes. Right? So anyway, so what stood out to me about, and maybe that's just a warning that I'm throwing out there, depending on where we go with this, of how things are going to go for both of us. So what stood out to me about your post was that you were, I think it said you were 37 years old. Is that right? You were 37 at the time?
At diagnosis.
Yep.
Diagnosis. Yeah.
And you were in the best shape of your life. You never thought, like you were at the peak, right, of where we think that we are, and something can just take you down to the very bottom. And you never thought that at that time, something like this would happen. And so when I saw that, that's what took me to our member right now, who is a young guy in good shape, has no reason to think that he would be getting cancer now. And so if there's a couple things that I'm hoping that our audience takes from this is, number one, everybody's going through something, you know, and number two is regardless, you can take a lot of these lessons that we're going to talk about going forward and beating this thing and where you are now, to anything in your life, your personal life, your business life, any of that stuff. So, so this is probably you never thought that you would be here getting that kind of news at 37, especially you're in great shape. You're a personal trainer. You take care of yourself. Like, how is that even possible? And then you guys just started going, it sounds like. Is that what happened now? It's just like, what do we need to do to take care of this?
So I am very much a planner and a doer type person. And if I feel a certain motivation to get something done, then it's nothing stands in my way at all. And in this case, for me, I didn't quite process it in regards to what am I going to do for myself right now. So my mind immediately went to the fact that I was a mom of a little kid, two little girls at the time who were 4 and 7. And it was, what do I need to do right now? A, to ensure my survival, but B, if I don't make it through this, which this cancer has actually a pretty low survival rate. And I can get into that in a little bit, but it was B, if I don't survive, what do I need to do now to ensure that my kids are okay and happy and living their life without their mom? And so the first thing I knew that Rob and I needed to do was tell them. And at first I wasn't sure I was going to tell them. At first we were just going to send them off to my sisters in Tampa, and we were just going to take care of it. But we realized this is going to be something that impacts us for years and years and years, and possibly forever. And so I called their pediatrician and I said, I need advice. I need to know what I need to do with my kids. And he said, you need to be 3 things. You need to make it simple, honest, and hopeful. And so that's exactly what I did. And Rob actually had a hard time with the communication with them. And so what I did was I literally took each one of them by themselves and had a a very specific conversation with them. I took Samantha first, who was 7 at the time, and I knew she would understand a little bit more than Maggie, who was only 4. And I told Samantha, and I told her in the best way that I knew how. And I didn't really know how, but I did the best that I could do, making it as hopeful as possible, letting her know that, mommy's going to be gone for a little bit. Mommy won't be able to talk to you for a while, which I can talk about later. I lost my voice for months. But it's a small cancer. And we have great doctors, and, we spoke to the fact that they were just a wonderful community, that Grammy and Doc their grandparents, my parents, were going to come and live with us for a few months. And, I know this sounds funny, but almost like make it fun because I knew my time in the hospital was going to be a while. And so we sent them to Tampa. We sent them to Tampa to live with my sister for a little bit during the hardest part. And then when they came home, my parents were here to kind of pick up the pieces. Rob was still able to work. He went through some pretty rough times as the caregiver and father to Sam and Maggie. And my dad pretty much never left my side the entire time. I think the doctor/nurse in him just kicked in, and he was there every step of the way. And thank God, because there were a couple times in the hospital where he had to step in and say, she can't have this medicine. You just gave her this an hour ago. And I think about if he hadn't been there, what could have happened at certain times. And then my mom was really me for a long time. She was with the girls, getting them on the bus, getting them off the bus, or Samantha, and then taking Maggie to school, getting their lunches, getting their dinners, doing the dishes. She was me for a while. And so we just kind of had to say, this is a tough time in our family, but we're going to get through it. With Maggie, who was only 4 at the time, it was much, much more of a simple conversation. She didn't even really know what cancer was. And so we just kind of talked about how your body's made of cells, and sometimes one cell can get really angry, but the doctors are going to do whatever they can to get rid of that angry cell. And it was as simple as that.
I remember you guys had come over to our house a couple times with James, and your kids were just awesome with him. So this is before this. We reconnected here in Nashville before this diagnosis, and you had come over a couple times. We had a birthday party, I think, for James, and another one for Will, and your kids would come over, and they're amazing little kids, and they had seen James with this tube in his nose. And I remember when I found out, and you told me that you told the kids that you were asking me about this tube and some like, what's it like? And what's it going to be? I was like, I don't really know. But your kids had seen that. So that was a way that you used to explain to the kids what mommy's going to look like when you come out of the surgery and things like that. So I thought that was really, you used some really fun ways, it sounds like, to make it not so stressful for the kids. Right. And what was it like for you inside during this time? Like, are you completely freaking out that it's gonna not go well?
I wasn't. I almost had. It was almost like I can't even explain it. Something was just overcame me, and I couldn't get nervous or scared. I just had to do and go and fix things. I wrote out a will. I talked to the girls. I had all my insurance stuff put together for myself and the kids. I wrote death plans. I wrote plans for a funeral for myself. And I wasn't processing it probably the way a psychologist would probably say you should, or a psychiatrist. But for me, keeping myself busy and putting a plan in place was what kept me calm, so that when I did have to go in for surgery a couple weeks later, I knew I knew I had done all I could possibly do other than fight for my life. So
it's interesting. I wrote down reflex kicked in at that time. It sounds like that's kind of the a little bit of the planner in you, the detail oriented type person. The mom in you, right? Like, I'm going to make sure everybody else is taken care of before me. And
reflex, kind of like fight or flight almost.
Yeah. Well, yeah, a little bit, but it's almost to me like You're saying, I don't know what happened. I don't know why. It's just, you go back to this, like, what is your inherent nature inside of you? Like, who are you? And
Right.
I wonder if it goes back to how you were raised and the kind of person that you are, and that you want to take care of others before you take care of yourself. And if somebody else would have had a different reaction, right? You have the people who might not, they really are selfish. They don't care about others. They're just going to give up or say like, why me all the time. And I really think that's kind of that choice that you have at this point. I remember hearing about James and all of the things that we go through now as raising him. We have two options. We can feel sorry for ourselves and wonder why it happened, or we can just use it as power, like to just change it, right? We can take it and say, like, hey, I was put in a unique position for a reason. Why? And really dig into that. So I'm sure we'll get there now coming out of the back of this for you. But what I'm hearing a lot of is you really kind of, when you're at this point, you really find out who you are.
Sure. I do. When I think about you, though, I think about how positive you always seem when you're talking about James, which is how, again, I feel like I tried to be with my kids, especially, and others. I didn't want to burden others, but you do internally have your own moments of stress and anxiety related to it all that you don't necessarily want the rest of the world to see. And honestly, I didn't want really Rob to see it. Of course, he saw me break down at times leading up, but I didn't also want him to maybe feel any of that. So, because I knew he was gonna have such a big job on his shoulders.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I wrote down was that you had this incredible support network and system, right? Like you had your mom and dad come down, and you had your sister to watch the kids, and you had all of these things in place, that these people that were cheering for you. And we might get to the point of all the other support that you had with neighbors and food and all the people that were just behind you, that strong shirts, like that was insane. Cheerleader, right?
My parents, I mean, Maryland is a great place to be, but my dad at that point was like, I want to retire in Franklin because these are the type of people that I want to be around for the rest of my life. He said, I have never in my life, even as a doctor, seen people rally like they have in this situation. And a lot of it was like, I think people just knew my kids and Rob needed that support. The meals and everything. The meals weren't for me. I was eating through a feeding tube. Like, they were there for my family, their teachers. And that is what we needed the most.
Yeah. So, okay. So what was like, what happened now? So you're at the hospital and so you got everything, you got the I's dotted, the T's crossed. You feel like, okay, what's the next step here on something like this?
So Vanderbilt, I knew a lot of people, it took sometimes months and months to get into Vanderbilt for this type of cancer. And so we used all of the connections that we had. My dad, my brother who works in healthcare, my sister-in-law who works for the CDC, and Rob, who knew a lot of people in healthcare. And we were able to get in within a week and a half, which is just unheard of. But I'm so thankful for that, because this is a very fast growing cancer of the oral cavity. And so the quicker you could get in, the earlier you can be staged, the better your chances of survival. And I think back to the moment when I felt that spot in my mouth, and how many people have things going on in their mouth. They tell me all the time now, they're like, we've had a spot in our mouth. We haven't seen a doctor in a year for it. We're just thinking it'll go in. I'm like, go get it checked. Go. But, so anyway, so the next step was I was told to put on weight because I knew weight loss was going to happen. And so they said, just put on a few pounds, eat whatever you want over the next few days before the surgery. Didn't really know what the surgery was going to be, and how kind of mutilating to the whole, my thought was, oh, they're just going to take this little spot out of my mouth. Well, it wasn't that at all.
Did they know, or did they not know until
they knew? And in the meeting, right before the surgery, a few days before, they went over everything that was going to happen. And at that moment, and this is going to sound really kind of funny, but when they told me they were going to use my wrist tissue and an artery from my left arm to rebuild my tongue and my floor of mouth and my gum line, my first thought was, am I going to be able to play tennis again? And so it wasn't, oh gosh, I'm going to lose part of my body, I might die from this. It was, just make sure, doc, that I can play tennis again. But I'm kind of also thankful that I naturally felt that way, because I didn't go to that, darkest place immediately. I did get there at certain times in the hospital.
Well, I think that goes straight to your kind of the mindset that you're in, right?
Yeah.
It's the place that you're putting yourself in.
Sure.
You when I hear that, I don't hear like that's funny or
Right.
Can I play tennis, or you're a little bit nuts. What I hear is you know that you're going to get through this.
Yeah.
Like when this is over,
maybe what it was. Yes.
when this is over, I want to make sure that I can play tennis. So your mindset is right at that point. You're saying like, at no point did you give up. At no point did you quit. At no point are you throwing in the towel or saying what if. I mean, as the story's unfolding, it's obvious what the outcome is going to be, because you're going to fight through this whole thing.
Sure.
So, and I think there's people who probably go into that saying like, oh my gosh, what? Like, no, this is just getting worse and worse, and pity. But you're already on the back end in your mind. And I think our mind is so strong in what we do, whether it's anything in life, but you're going to make it through this regardless of.
That is so true. And I mean, that kind of puts it in perspective for me. I'm not the best with reflecting about all of this stuff, but that does kind of make sense. But I do think I did get to a point in the hospital. So, well, let me back up a little bit. So the surgery, we flew our kids to Tampa. And when we told the girls they were going to go to Tampa, they didn't obviously hear us say that my sister was going to fly to Nashville and then fly back to Tampa with them. When Rob and I told them they were going to go to Tampa for a while and live with their cousins, my older daughter, who was 7 at the time, she put her arm around Maggie and said, well, Maggie, when we're in the airport, I'll bring my purse and I'll buy us some snacks so that we have food for the airplane ride. And Rob's and my heart just sunk at that. We realized what a strong little girl. She thought this whole time that they were going to be flying by themselves to Tampa. And we just took a step back and we were like, this is a lot on them. This is going to be a lot. And so my sister flew here. She flew them back. And then the next day we went in for the surgery, and my parents came, Rob was there, and it was really good for them all to be there and my minister from she showed up at 5 a.m. and just prayed with us. And then I went back, and Rob said, after they had given me the IV and I was starting to fall asleep, he kind of walked me as far as he could. And he said, and I barely remember this, but vaguely do. He said, he grabbed my hand, I grabbed his hand back, and I looked at him and I said, you're the love of my life. And he said that just shattered him. And he just took that with him the whole time. And the surgery itself lasted 9 hours. And I was wheeled into ICU at about 8 or 9 o'clock that evening. And so that recovery time, so when I kind of came to, I didn't really come to because they're just pumping you with all the meds and you're out of it. But I couldn't close my mouth. My tongue was so swollen. They did something called a radical neck dissection, where I did not Google this beforehand, and I'm really glad I didn't. But a radical neck dissection is when they basically cut your neck from ear to chin, and they take out lymph nodes to test to see if the cancer has spread. And when you look up a radical neck dissection, you can see they literally pull your face off. And so I'm just thankful they were able to put it back. I still can't feel that side of my face at all. And then I spoke about the tissue of my arm and the artery from my arm to rebuild my mouth. And I speak actually very well in comparison to a lot who have gone through this. I went through a lot of speech therapy, but, the recovery, I was able to speak with a lovely woman named Lori, who had this cancer 2 years before me. And she has just really made it her mission to help patients who are recently diagnosed and just talk to them. And when I spoke with her on the phone, she does not speak. It's hard to hear her over the phone because she lost a lot of her voice. But she told me, or she asked me, do you want to hear what could happen in the hospital after the surgery, or do you not want to know? And I said, I want to know everything. I want to know what could happen, what I'll be up against and all that. I just wanted to know. And so I'm so thankful she did, because there were two moments during that 8-day hospital stay where I almost died. And I knew one of them I actually knew could happen thanks to her. And so, I mean, I was just, that hospital stay is really hard. I had, Rob was there trying to just be a person of inspiration for me. And he had a hard time understanding when he was talking to me about the girls in Tampa, saying they're doing great. They went to Busch Gardens with Aunt Emily. I couldn't speak. I just held up my hand, and on the whiteboard I wrote, "Please stop." I couldn't hear anything about anyone else in my life. In that moment, it's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It was truly 100% I was surviving. That was all I could do at that point. I was fighting for my life. And Rob didn't really understand that. He was like, why doesn't she want to hear about how the girls are doing? Isn't that going to help her? And it wasn't at that point. It was making me feel stress to a degree. And so I had a trachea breathing for me. The feeding tube, like little James. Mine was yellow. I think James was blue when the girls, because Maggie made a point to say, it's not the same color as James.
It was, I think it's yellow with a small blue stripe on it. She probably saw so that calls the size. The sizing is
okay.
on that, but it was mostly, I remember a lot of yellow up his nose. He had it for like 6 months.
Yeah, I remember.
Crazy.
And I thought about him. I remember there, like thinking.
I want to talk about that, but
yeah.
So before we do, let me.
Yeah.
I want to ask a couple questions. So
Sure.
I think I haven't. It was really hard to hear, by the way. So you probably saw me like wiping my eyes and stuff, because this is taking me to a place that I haven't thought about in 2 years. So
sure.
Because on the other side of that, there's somebody that is letting somebody go potentially. So I know how Rob feels. I don't know how James felt or how you felt, but I know how Rob feels. And that was probably the hardest thing for me, was that moment in the unknown, right? Because when that kind of like dolly rolls away, you don't know what's going to happen. So, right. So for us, it's really hard because we are out of control. Like, I'm a control freak and I want to be in control. And that second I was like, this is up to him and it's up to everybody else involved. And it's really, really hard to release that. And so that was the hardest part for me to hear. And James couldn't hear what we were saying to him, but I remember the first time we've handed him over 4 different times. So I remember and frankly, we handed him over like 3 different times for heart catheters that don't seem to be that big of a deal, but they are. And sure. So I know what that feels like. And that first time was the hardest ever. You have no idea what's going to happen. So the question that I wanted to ask you is like, why do you think you wanted to know all those things? Like, why do you think when she said, do you want to know or not? Why do you think you said yes?
Because I'm also a little bit of a control freak. And while I want to 100% trust my doctors and nurses, I still have that. I know that I am the best person to take care of myself. And so the actual thing that happened was behind my trachea, I kept saying I can't breathe. I couldn't breathe. And I had such great nurses. Oh my God, I can't even tell you how amazing my nurses were. But at the same time, there was this moment that happened, and I'm saying I can't breathe, but I'm not saying this. I'm actually writing this on my whiteboard and texting it to Rob, telling them I can't breathe because I can't speak. And so they're like, well, what can we do? And I'm like, get the nurse. So the nurse would come in and she would say, but the machine says you're at 99% oxygen. And I'm like, I can't breathe. I cannot breathe. Trust me, trust the patient, don't trust the machine. And so a whole entire day went by where I was just laboring in my breathing, and the machine was saying it wasn't. And we demanded the on-call doctor finally come in. And so he came in And this was a moment that is so disgusting, but yet humorous, and Rob and I laugh about it. The doctor comes in and says, okay, what's going to happen is I'm going to remove the trach temporarily. There's going to be a hole in your neck, but the second I take it off, I need you to cough through your neck. And like, I think about this now and it kind of makes me feel like others probably think it's the nastiest thing ever. And I just have to laugh about it because I have no other choice. And so he said, okay, on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, he removed it. I coughed, and literally across the room shot this bloody, huge nastiness of phlegm that he goes, well, you sure did have a block. He put the trach back in and I could breathe again. And Rob was like, oh my gosh, I wish I had that on video.
And why didn't we do that 24 hours ago?
24 hours ago.
Yeah.
And so that was one of the scariest moments. The second one was, it was a nighttime in the ICU. It was like my 3rd night. And they tell you with the feeding tube and the trach, you cannot vomit. You can't vomit. And so, you know, James may have felt this at times through the feeding tube. If you're fed too fast or if you don't have enough water going through, like you just feel nauseous, like you want to vomit. And the nurse on call, he was very stressed. He was so stressed that we found out later that the man next to me was dying that night. And so he was just back and forth. And when he came in, he gave me water too quickly through my feeding tube. And I grabbed Rob's hand. I was like, I'm going to vomit. And they said, you cannot vomit. You will aspirate. You cannot vomit. And so Rob just sat there, and like, for being that, you know, Italian with such high energy and passion, he was the person who calmed me to a point where, I mean, he had to take me to a different place in my mind. He basically saved my life that night, and kept me from vomiting. And so that was the second really scary moment in the hospital. But
the hardest thing that I remember you telling me about that NG tube. And how long did you have it in? For a week?
I had it for 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
And I lost about 15 pounds, which is now why they told me to gain weight before.
Okay. So I remember you telling me that because with James would always pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
He'd pull it out, and he got sick a lot. So they were worried about him aspirating as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a trach though. So not as big of a deal, but these kids.
Still a big deal.
It is. And so they wanted to do a procedure on him for his stomach because they thought he may have been, what's the word I'm looking for? Reflux.
Reflux.
They were thinking he could have reflux because
Mm-hmm.
he would get sick. I mean, I remember this time he was getting sick all the time, every night, like 2-3 times we'd give him the milk and then he'd get sick in his bed and everything that he ate. So we all were worried about is him gaining weight, you know, and because, and thriving. And so he would pull it out, and we were so scared to have another surgery to put in the G tube that he has now. So he had a little surgery, but he had been through like 4 surgeries, and it's like, it was our problem. We should have done that earlier, but they also weren't focused on it. That was like the lowest priority, which you probably saw too. There were things that they were like, that may have made you uncomfortable. But when you told me how it felt afterwards, you told me, I said, how was it? You told me that was one of the worst things that you could ever feel, is having that go down your nose and be there. We're trying to get him to eat by mouth. It's uncomfortable for him. And then we're trying to get him to talk and do all the things that kids do when they, you know, and drink water and drink milk and all these things. And that fact that he couldn't tell us what you told me and what you were able to communicate, he couldn't.
It makes you wonder what he was feeling.
100%. I know how he's feeling. He's feeling the same way you were. And that conversation that I had with you is probably the hardest one, because it made me go back and say, I screwed up. Like we should have not worried about another little surgery. But anyway, like the past is the past. We can't change it now, and he's happy and doing really well. But there's a couple memories that I have from this, because we didn't see each other all the time. But the fact that we had lived through something similar, we have even more of a deeper connection now, I think. And so we could share some of those things. And I know what Rob's going through, not with a spouse, but with a child. Is you are just super helpless. And he's telling you that stuff because it's like, what else are we going to do? Like, I'm so helpless in here. We think that that's the right thing to do. Like, I would just be there and just hold James's hand. And then I would just try to get my mind off of things, because for us, no control, our mind goes to the deepest, darkest place that we don't want to be. So I would work more. I would find things to do. I would just try to stay out of that place, like out of the what if kind of thing. So then you went into kind of recovery after this. It was that surgery and then recovery?
Yeah. So I went in for surgery October 23rd, 2017, and I was released, whatever they say, they released me from the hospital on Halloween. And so the next step was...
so was that 2 weeks? That's 2 weeks in the hospital?
It was eight or 9 days. It was
okay.
8 or 9 days in the ICU. And then home. And at home, I still had... They removed the trachea the day I left, which was very scary. I was very much afraid to be able to breathe on my own. But again, you just do it. And then home with the feeding tube. And while home recovery, I still wasn't really able to close my mouth very well. The feeding tube had to happen because my mouth was so swollen. My tongue was so swollen, I couldn't get food down to swallow. And I was healing from the trachea, so there was really no swallow. And my dad, literally, the moment I woke up, he was sitting in a chair right by me. He gave me my meds every night, which was a lot of meds that helped me physically, but also a lot of it wasn't Xanax, but it was an anxiety type medication just because of the mental trauma that you go through with all this. And Rob, I just remember at this point when I had gotten home, he was able to tell me, his mind took him to a place where he said, I can't do girls' hair. Like, that's where his mind went. I can't do girls' hair. If you die, I can't do certain things with them. And he didn't sleep well for a long time. I still doesn't sleep well, but
is there still fear of that now after the surgery, that you won't make it? Or are you in recovery now? Like, we made it out of the surgery. I'm good. All I have to do is recover here. Or is he still in a place like that now?
So I think he's actually in a even better place than I am in terms of being positive. And, he sees me doing well. I still, while I am doing really well, I'm still the one who feels like I can't chew on my right side because I still don't have teeth there, which I'm in the process of getting. I know it's hard for me to swallow. And when I'm at restaurants, like, I have to use a little spoon and push my food to the left-hand side. And it's embarrassing, especially when I'm with new people. And it's...
Well, hey, Natalie, I meant at this time when you left the hospital.
Yeah.
So, like, when he said, I can't do girls' hair, like, when got the feeding tube in.
Yeah.
And now at this point, are they saying, like, everything's good, we removed all the cancer, we're at a point where you're fine? Or are you still thinking that this could go south then? So
before my last day, they got the results back from the surgery and said that they had gotten everything. It had, all the edges were clear. It had not spread to my lymph nodes. CT scans I had to do for the first year every 3 months to check to see if it had reoccurred. This second year, which was last year, it was every 6 months CT scans. My last CT scan was November, which was clear. And I just saw my oral surgeon and oncologist a couple weeks ago, and my husband asked him the question. He said, when can we officially say that she's cancer free? And they said, at this point, even though you're doing well and you have I think 85% chance of survival, and much lower chance of recurrence, they said until, we don't usually say that until they're 5-7 years out. And I have friends in the group I go to Gilda's Club with who have had head and neck cancer. They didn't catch it quite as early, and they were staged at stage 4. But some of them have gone 7 or 8 years being cancer free, and they have just had reoccurrence. And so I know that this is a super aggressive cancer that could always come back. And so my mind, in the back of my mind, I always kind of think about that as I'm living life every day. But Rob is very positive now, and I need that. He doesn't live in my shoes physically, so he doesn't quite feel, and like it's always a daily reminder for me. But he's kind of turned a lot, which is great. So,
what about? Okay, so that recovery obviously took some time. You got back. I remember you came over to the house not long after that, and you gave me like a warning. You're like, hey, I talk, like you might not understand some of the things that I'm saying. I'm getting better, stuff like that. But I was just shocked at the speed at which you were coming back from this. Is that common?
I guess I have to say it'll depend on the person and how, I went to speech therapy. I went to lymphedema therapy. I did physical therapy, for every part of my body, that like my wrist and my shoulder from the neck dissection. And so I was just very much focused on that. I stopped my job. I stopped training. I did everything I could to make sure that I was the priority, other than my kids and what I had to do as a mom. But getting my speech back was a big one. I really, really worked hard with the speech therapist. And they were able to preserve the tip of my tongue, which was huge for speech. I get caught up when my mouth gets dry because they removed a salivary gland. But there's one letter is really hard to say, and that's a G. It's just because you just don't think about this stuff until you have to, it's just something that I'm going to deal with forever. But I was very intentional about doing everything I could early on, knowing that, especially with lymphedema and fibrosis, if I had not gone to see them at the Diani Center at Vanderbilt to have lymphedema massage therapy, that can get really bad really quickly. Scar tissue, all of that stuff, if you don't take care of it kind of immediately. So I just was very intentional about it.
You said you don't think about this stuff until you have to. And it reminds me a lot of like James was eating fine until he went in the hospital and got intubated, and then he just stopped and he never learned how. And it took us like 2 years to teach him how to eat. 2-3 days a week. He's going to feeding therapy to learn how to eat. Yeah. He's just so used to, and it's probably the 6 months with the NG tube where he's gagging on stuff. Was never felt comfortable for him. He just didn't learn. You take all this stuff for granted, right? Until you have to. And I remember kids would look at him and say, how come he can't eat? He doesn't know how. He never learned how. And it's something that we just learn, we see, and it's everything that we do, right? It's like these little steps to take that become a habit, or we learn how to do it. So, and then when it's taken away from you, isn't it interesting how we take so many things for granted? Like the little things that are so powerful that we need to do anything. Like I think about my vision, my hearing, my speech, like all these kind of things that you just kind of expect. Yeah. And if we lost any one of those things, it's just a massive change in how we operate, how we have to live our lives. So what was your mindset through that comeback? Like, is that the time, like, where was the struggle? Was there a struggle during this period that you had to overcome a lot of things during that comeback? Was that the hardest part, or was it the early stage or middle stage?
So I think, I really wanted to taste ice cream again. I really wanted to eat cheese again. And, I don't have certain taste buds on my right side of my tongue that work clearly because it's my wrist in my tongue. But I joke about that. And with the doctors, I'm like, you couldn't have done like part of my foot, because then I could always say things and then be like, oh, foot and mouth. But I can't say wrist and mouth. But so I really wanted to be able to eat foods again. Like that was a huge motivation for me. Like who doesn't love food, right? I did have a setback too. I got a neck infection where one of the tubes were, and I had to go back into the ER, which was a nightmare of an evening with my father. But there were always some setbacks. In those early days, it was mostly about just trying to get enough food into the feeding tube before I was finally able to have that removed. But even after I had that removed, I think the hardest thing was trusting my ability through my mouth to be able to swallow again. Like I remember the first time my dad said, drink 2 sips of water. And I was like, I can't do it. And he was like, you got to do it. And I was like, I can't do it. And he was like, you have to do it. And so I did it. And as uncomfortable and, nauseous as it made me feel, like I knew for my own survival, I had to do certain things. As for like getting back to normal life, like I set a goal. I want to be able to do a plank again, which is hard with the wrists that I have, but like just small goals. I knew I wanted to play tennis by spring. I set kind of like midterm goals. Is those little things that I kind of just set for myself. And I even wrote on my little Post-it note by my bed, and by my 5-year cancer bucket list is to get on the Ellen show. But I think about that and I laugh too, because I'm like, what makes my story worthy? I don't know. Like I'm sure I've, gone through this, but like you've said, everyone is suffering in their own way. Everyone has their own issues. And I struggle with that. Like, why, why is this that important? But then sometimes when I tell my story and see how impacting it is, or from a young mom's perspective, I can see, okay, well, this might help, somebody.
I think first of all, you're selling yourself incredibly short with that last comment. Like I'd say we'll have thousands of people listen to the show, and there might be one that says I have a more compelling story than you. Sure. It's just amazing to hear this and go through it, because you and I haven't, this is the first that we've really dug into this and discussed it. And I had no idea how it was going to affect me the way that it has so far, because these are wounds that I obviously have not healed for me. And part of it is because we have to go back again into this world. But you have the story that you have, that power, I keep going back to this word mindset, because you're putting yourself in this place that you were strong for your kids, you were strong for your husband, you're strong for yourself, you fought through the whole thing, you were, at least from what it sounds like, always positive. And there were times where you had these breakdowns. You had this time where you said, I want to give up, but then you had that support network, fortunately, that was there for you to catch you, right? And you're just, I've known you for a long time, and I know that you're the kind of person who, you're a total fighter. You're going to win. You're incredibly competitive, and winning in this journey and winning in life is no different, right? And sure. Part of the reason why I want to have this conversation is that I want you to know how incredibly powerful this message is, and I know that the feedback that we'll get from this will compel you and propel you to do more with this story, because that we're a compilation of our stories. That's who we are and what we are and what makes us. But you say like everybody's going through something, and they are. And I don't want to discount what anybody else is going through right now. We all have something. If you think that everybody's life is perfect, or everybody that you come across is having a great day all the time, there's not things behind the facade that you see. It's not true. Everybody's got something. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something going on. And it's really how we handle that. That's the key. Like, what are we doing with it?
Sure.
And the other part that I didn't mention in the beginning of why I wanted you to come on is because this is a fantastic platform for us to share about oral cancer in general, and how deadly it can be, and how fast it can grow, and how important it is that if you have something that's going on that you're worried about, to go get it checked out right away.
Right.
And like, if we can use any of the, I have a microphone and we have some listeners, like if anybody's listening to that, we'll give you the route at the end. Like Natalie has some great, places to send you, some ideas, some things to do, and we'll cover that. But so have you ever read the book called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy? You ever read that?
I have not.
Okay.
But you also read like 60 books in a year or something a couple years ago.
I try.
I don't know if it was that many, but
you'll have it in 2 days, and I think it'll be an interesting one for you to read about, because it's just these small steps, it's these small changes that are made over time become this massive change, and it's the journey that you're on over the last few years with the changes that you've had to make. This, like swallow that one sip of water, that one sip becomes 2, and those 2 swallows become 3. And it's just like the planking and doing anything that we wanted to accomplish. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not a light switch. It's small things, and it goes both ways, good habits and bad habits. Bad habits are formed by small changes over time that become bad habits in the big picture. And same thing with success. Same thing with anything that we do in life. It's small changes over time. So I'm going to send you that one. It's one of my favorite books. I was just telling somebody today on our call, you're welcome. It's one of these, my buddy, or my staff this morning, I recommended it to them. And I said, my uncle, who'd been smoking for like 35, 40 years of his life, this was one of the catalysts of reading that book that helped him quit smoking. He's quit smoking about 2 or 3 years ago now. And it's just the mental change and challenge that we have going forward is the key.
And it's the habit 100% with that, especially.
Yep. And you got a habit of beating things, of succeeding, of being in competition. And I think what that does is it drives us to do what we need to do in life and in business. What else can, if somebody's going through something like this, I really want to speak to the guy that we have in our group. He's probably in a place right now. Like, what advice would you give him? So he just had surgery to remove this tumor. And so now what? Because he's probably in a place of, it can come back. I don't know what's happening. I'm in this unknown. Like, what kind of advice would you give him there?
So for me, it was to set small goals, and then kind of midterm goals, and then long-term goals. Like I said, I went over a few of them. But the other thing is saying yes to others, wanting to help, whether that's, let me give your kid a ride to soccer practice, or let me bring you a meal. Rob and I have always been very much like, no, we can do this on our own. But this was the first time in our lives where we really had to say yes to the community because they want to help. And it's kind of like it's a catalyst effect. It makes us want to, give back again to others. And so saying yes is a big one. Letting your caregivers be there for you, letting them feel the emotion that they're feeling as well. Faith, have faith. And, I cannot even tell you how much my church family meant to me during this time as well, and prayers. And the other thing, the big one for me was I found a group of people at Gilda's Club here in Middle Tennessee. Gilda's Club was started by Gilda Ragnar, who was married to Gene Wilder, who was Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. She started it. She got cancer back in the 70s or something, and she realized there really wasn't a support group for people going through cancer that was like an emotional support group. And so Gilda's Club was created across the nation. They have local chapters everywhere for every single type of cancer, where you can go and meet once a month. You can go in as often as you want. It's completely free. And so I go once a month to the head and neck cancer group and have made the most awesome friends there. A lot of them are in the music industry. A lot of them have been big, heavy smokers for years, or chewed tobacco, or big into alcohol. And just like I was the youngest one in there when I started. But it's finding some sort of support where, it's like-minded individuals. And I say that because your caregivers, there's nothing more important than those caregivers who are there for you. But at the same time, they can't quite get into the same headspace as you, or quite understand why you might be crying 10 hours of the day, So just having that, knowing that what you're going through is normal and okay, and there are others like you. Those are a few points, I guess, that I can recommend. Yeah,
I think I really love the faith comment. So we're pretty much run on fear, it seems, and it's fear or faith that you can choose what it's going to be. I'd much rather live my life on faith than just kind of fear and avoiding issues and those kind of things.
Me too.
Yeah.
Amen.
So before we wrap up, I have one more question for you, and I think it goes to this place of depression. So I feel like that's kind of that's an area that people can fall into very easily after something like this. Have you ever felt yourself go there or see that in this journey that you've had, whether it's you or somebody else around you?
So yes, I keep Xanax by my bed for anxiety that I get. with anxiety, I don't have a fear of dying. I have developed a fear of, if I die, are my kids going to be okay? That's actually a very real fear. There's actually a name for it. But so when Rob is traveling on business and I'm alone with the kids, like I lie in bed at night a lot of times, need my Xanax to help, but I lie in bed at night and my heart pounds, my stomach hurts. I have such sick issues because I think if something happens to me right now in this moment, my kids, who are now 7 and 9, what have we prepared them enough to know what to do if something happens to me right now? Do I think something will? Am I doing great? I am, but that's, like you were saying, that's the emotional side. And it's a form of depression. I think Gilda's Club helps me a lot. I still see a therapist. My kids, unfortunately, my oldest has developed some anxiety. So we all see a therapist. We went early on too to family therapy to help them kind of through all this. But depression is I think everyone kind of deals with depression at some point in their lives. And it's just one of the hardest things, I think, to kind of overcome. Depression and anxiety, I feel like a lot of times go hand in hand. I like with you, like I think about like when I have to run into people who knew me before this, and they're going to see how much I've changed physically, and maybe they won't. Maybe it's just my fears. They're gonna hear that I sound differently. They remember me from when I used to sing, and they don't know that I can't sing anymore. I think that's adds a little bit to the depression side, even though I feel like I'm a very confident person. There are those things. And then I get upset at times when I meet somebody new. I think, well, they're not going to really know what I was like before all this. And they might now just see me as, that's the girl who had, her tongue removed or something, So there's a lot going on up here, but yeah.
So is the way to get past that, all of those things, like the solution to a lot of those things, or is maintenance? It's seeing somebody. It's leaning on your support network. It's being positive. It's all of those
and using what has happened to you towards something positive, and being able to help somebody else, and Gilda's Club and church and all those people. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember when you reached out to me, now that you mentioned it, you said, well, hey, I might sound a little bit different, or I'm also going to have this cover on my wrist when I come in.
That was more for me than for you, probably.
Yeah, for sure. Like I told you, I remember hugging you when you came in and just said, oh my gosh, you're doing amazing. Like you are like doing so much better than I thought you were. You made it sound like you weren't even going to be able to talk to me. And I can understand everything that you're saying. We are having a full on conversation, and I don't care who you were. I care about who you are, Right. And the fact that like now I see you in a totally different light than I did before. And I put you up on a pedestal before, and you're even higher than now. So it's
likewise.
Well, thank you. But I'll tell you, like, I think a lot of this stuff goes on in our head, right? It's something that we are manifesting. It's not something that anybody else is seeing. And in fact, I don't know. I think about this a lot because we have some similar struggles with myself and Lucy and with James and everything that's going on. Is the anxiety and the depression and things like that are there, and you kind of like beat each other up instead of like we have a little one that has this, so it's much easier for us to take it out on each other than it is to anything else, right?
Yeah.
So, really, it's all going on. It's a battle that we're waging in our mind. And this transcends what we're talking about here. It's really everything that we do is all about the mind is such a powerful thing that we have. It's such a powerful driving force in everything that we do, and the way that we think, and the way that we act, and the way that we make decisions, and the way that we speak to people, and how we react to something when it's not quite right is just the frame of mind that we're in at the time. And if we can really start controlling that and start thinking about, why do I feel this way? What's going on? How can I help? And I think the support network is the biggest thing. Like a lot of people just take it and they just suck it up until they explode, right? So really talking about it and being open and honest and vulnerable in anything that we're doing. This kind of story, our life, our business, our work life, anything that's going on is like leaning on that support network. The support is it. I need it all the time.
Well, thank you for propelling me to tell my story today.
You're welcome. And I hope that you continue to do so. And I know that you've reached out to me a couple times and we've had some talks about what you want to do and where you want to go and what you want to be. But, I personally, obviously we're talking kind of like on the air, right? On the recording now, but I think you have an amazing story. I think you need to share it. I think you can help hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people that are going through something just like this. And I think you're fantastic. So I'm going to push you in that direction. And I think it could also, like when that happens, the power that you have when you just help somebody else get through that, it changes who you are too. Mm-hmm. So when you see somebody become successful because of something that you said or did or any impact, and you've seen it as a coach, as a mentor, as you're growing up with your kids, that changes how we think. It changes our mindset. It lets us get over some of the things that we're still carrying around. When we can go out and be impactful, we can see progress and success in what we're doing. So we'll talk about that more afterwards and together. So how can people, let's see, where do you want to send people? I'd say next month is Oral Cancer Awareness Month. Is that right?
That is correct. April is Oral Cancer Awareness Month, which when I say oral cancer, it kind of is the throat, the oral cavity, the tongue, the base of the tongue, neck area. It's also, there's a whole bunch, basically anything that's head and neck. It is not thyroid cancer. That's its own. So yeah. And so Oral Cancer Awareness Month is April.
Okay. So go get checked out. If you've got something, talk about this, share this with somebody, share Natalie's story. Like if you know somebody who needs to hear this, and whether it's, they don't have to be going through cancer, might be going through something else. It's this, hopefully what you guys took from this is a journey it's a struggle, right? It's something that was placed in Natalie's life that she was not expecting. She thought there's no chance that this is going to happen when she woke up that day, and how she got through it and went through it. And you could plug in just about anything there, obviously not as dire as something like this potentially, but we're all going through something.
But let me, if you don't mind, add that oral cancer is growing at a high rate among young women, and they don't know why. There are links to HPV virus and Epstein-Barr virus. Usually when you're diagnosed, you're tested. Mine was not related to those two. But there's oral cancer screenings that dentists should be doing. And they should do them once a year at one of your 2 dental visits. And it's either an 8-point check that they do with their finger, or some of the more advanced dental locations have something called a Vel scope, which is a scope that has a specific light that can tell if there's any abnormal cell growth in your mouth. I had never had one before I was diagnosed. Not one of my dentists ever had done one. Because oral cancer is growing, more dentists are doing them. The best ones should do them free of charge, but not a lot. I will say not all of them do. So
that's a timely comment, because I'm going to the dentist next week, and I'm going to be asking for that. So, and what else? Like, where can we send them to find out more information about oral cancer? Are there some good websites? Is there any type of places that you would recommend some people donate if they want to? Like, what does that look like?
There is the Oral Cancer Foundation is excellent. Gilda's Club of Middle Tennessee is awesome, to specify. But also, like, depending on where you are, like, I am very big on donations to the specific oral department at Vanderbilt. There are ways to donate to those specific areas as well. One thing I really struggled with in the hospital was I would ring the bell for the nurse needing something immediately, and they would come on the loudspeaker and say, "How can we help you?" Well, I couldn't speak. And so I would ring it again. "How can we help you?" Eventually, my dad or Rob or my mom would have to go and say, "My daughter can't speak." So there has to be something on the doors that say, hearing impaired or voice impaired or something, like, so that they are aware of that sort of thing. There's a lot of ways to give and donate. I have my own YouTube channel, which tells a little bit about my story. It's under Natalie Hennes. You can Google YouTube, Natalie Hennes, my fight, and my video story will come up. I also have handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter where I send out information quite frequently, and we'll be doing a lot over the next month, leading up to Oral Cancer Awareness Month. The Oral Cancer Foundation has been the biggest and the best in regards to getting information out, though.
All right, we'll put the link to your YouTube channel in the show notes. We'll also put some of your links to like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, that kind of stuff. Whatever you want to share with us, we'll put it in there so they can find you and follow you if they want. And hey, here's the deal, guys. I want you all to go to Natalie's stuff, and I want you to encourage her. I want you to say, "Hey, we love your story. We want to hear more from you. I think you should. Your story is amazing. You could impact thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people by getting this out there. So please go there." Tell her, give her some support. This was not easy to come on and talk through this. It was, this is the first time that she's sharing this story really out there, kind of on a podcast, verbally like this. And I'm just thankful that you did. I think our member is going to take a lot from this. And I think there's a lot of people out there who, like, the way that I put it usually is, if I just change one person needed to hear this message today, we did our job. That's it. And if there's probably dozens, if not, hundreds of people out there that need to hear this right now, it's they're struggling with something. And when they can see somebody's like positivity through as much negative things that were going on in your life, I know that they'll have the power to get through those kind of things. So.
Well, thank you so much, Billy. I really appreciate being here, and I really will be saying a lot of prayers for your member and your friend, and I hope that all goes well for him and his family.
Thank you. All right. I think that's it. Natalie, I had so much fun talking to you today. I did too. That we did this, and if anybody has any questions, I'll kind of direct them over to you, and if we can get any more information out to people about this, I'd be happy to. So thank you so much for sharing your journey. I know it wasn't easy. It seemed to be like it was a little harder on me than it was on you. So you did a good job.
Thank you.
All right.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Hey, what's up, man? Hey, I just wanted to give you some words of encouragement. Robin Sharma said that obstacles are the cost of greatness. So I truly believe that this is just another obstacle on your way to greatness. So we love you, man. Hang in there. Keep your head up. Stay in the game. We love you. You got a ton of supporters.
Hey, buddy. I know things are hard for you right now. I'm so sorry that you're dealing with this hard stuff. I just want to let you know that I'm thinking about you. And I know that there's a purpose in suffering, although that you can't really see it right now. It's refining you. It's making you stronger. And also it's giving people, those you love, an opportunity to show how much they love you and reach out to you. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your example of suffering with courage. And I know that this is building you and it's going to help you to become better, even though you can't see it right now. So just want to say, I know it's always darkest before dawn, and your dawn is coming, brother. I appreciate you. Love you. Stay strong.
Hey, buddy. One of my friends used to have this saying. He would say, sometimes when you think you're in a dark place and it feels like you've been buried, you've actually been planted, which makes for a lot of fun. We're running around going, I'm planted, I'm planted. We are cheering for you. We love you so much. Hang in there. You got this.
Hey, bud, you're going to beat this. This is just another storm that you're going to weather like all the ones you've weathered before. Just know that your village is behind you, and we're here to help whenever you need it. So just reach out.
Thanks for listening to the 7-Figure Flipping Podcast with Bill Allen. If you want to grow and scale your house flipping or wholesaling business, check out more insider tips and strategies from the nation's most successful real estate investors at 7figureflipping.com.